I warned them, again and again. But 2 days after the HOA fined me for spreading panic, President Kennedy Morgan was screaming for help, buried to his waist in a roaring landslide right on top of the plaza he swore was perfectly safe. And as the ground swallowed everything he built, all I could think was, the Hill had been telling us for months. They just refused to listen. I moved to Sycamore Ridge for peace, not trouble. I'm 65, retired from military engineering, and all I wanted was quiet mornings, coffee on the porch, and to watch my dog Ranger sniff the ferns like he owned the whole neighborhood. Nothing dramatic, nothing complicated, just breathing room. But the thing about people like me is we never really stop reading the ground. 40 years of terrain logistics leaves its fingerprint on your brain. Even when you're retired, your mind still measures slopes, watches, runoff patterns, listens for the wrong kind of silence. The land speaks softly at first. Most people never hear it. But I do. The first warning was just a thin crack behind my backyard. No bigger than a coin, but deep enough that Ranger stopped mid-step and stared at it like it was alive. I crouched down, touched the soil, felt how loose it had become after the first week of heavy rain. Not enough to panic, but enough that I pulled out the inclinometer the next morning. The numbers weren't disaster yet, but they weren't normal either. Meanwhile, the HOA was sending out emails with fireworks emojis about beautifying Sycamore Ridge. They had this shiny new plan for a community plaza, benches, string lights, a concrete pad for family movie nights. Sounds great, except they wanted to build it right at the base of the exact slope that had started shifting. I walked down to the site the day the contractors arrived. 3 guys, 2 compactors, and not a single piece of geotechnical equipment. One kid couldn't have been older than 20, told me their consultant said everything looked fine. Their consultant was the landscaping company's owner. That's like hiring a wedding DJ to check the wiring in an airplane. I went home, wrote my first email. I kept it calm and clinical. Photos, rainfall charts, soil conditions, recommended protocols. Everything I knew might matter. Within minutes, an auto-reply thanked me for my community spirit. 2 hours later, Kennedy replied personally. You know the type, perfect hair realtor smile, a voice that always sounds like he's selling something. He thanked me, said they had full confidence in their consultants, and asked me to trust the process. Right. Because nothing screams trust me like ignoring actual experts. That week the storms got worse. The soil shifted more. I tracked every change in my logbook, pooling water fence posts, tilting half a bubble off level little rivulets forming where there used to be none. I wasn't guessing. I knew where this was headed. Then my neighbor Eileen, retired nurse practical as they come, stopped me at the mailbox. Aaron, my basement's cracking. Never seen anything like it. That was the moment I knew it wasn't just my hill whispering. The entire slope was starting to breathe the wrong way. I sent a second email, this one sharper. Attached more photos, rainfall anomalies, a bold line reading, recommend immediate halt of construction pending third-party geotechnical review. The HOA replied with a cheerful newsletter titled Clarity and Unity, which is HOA language for shut up and stop making us look bad. At the bottom in italics, please refrain from approaching contracted workers on site. Translation: stop telling the guys with the compactors they're compressing wet soil on a moving slope. I kept trying anyway. I printed everything, brought it to the HOA office myself. Tara Kennedy's wife, always in a blazer, always smiling like she rehearsed in a mirror, told me they were moving quickly to serve the community. That's what worries me, I said. She didn't laugh. By the next week, the slope was fully active. Small shifts every day. Ranger refused to walk the lower trail. And yet, the HOA put up a huge sign. Coming soon. Sycamore Commons. A glossy illustration of families smiling under string lights. No mud, no rain, no cracks, just denial printed on weatherproof vinyl. I felt my confidence slipping. I mean, what if I was being dramatic? Maybe I'd been in this field too long. Maybe I was seeing ghosts in the soil. Maybe it was just a twitch of old instincts that didn't know how to retire. I spent a night sitting at the kitchen table staring at my own charts like they might confess I'd overreacted. Ranger curled at my feet, staring at the window, ears twitching at sounds only dogs and geologists seem to hear. The next morning, Eileen knocked again, this time with fear in her voice. My patio's dropped a quarter-inch. The sump pump hasn't stopped all night. And just like that, every ounce of doubt dissolved. The hill wasn't whispering anymore. It was clearing its throat. I contacted an old colleague, Sarah Miller, now head of county emergency planning. I sent her everything. Within hours, she texted back. Movement indicators confirmed. Trying to push for a field review. No promises. That was the first real sign of hope, until the HOA announced a grand opening celebration for the plaza that Saturday. Coffee, donuts, ribbon cutting, rain or shine. You ever watch someone step onto train tracks while calling you dramatic for yelling train? That's exactly how it felt. 2 days before the event at 4 in the morning, my time-lapse camera captured headlights rolling up to the fenced-off construction area. Kennedy got out, hood up, flashlight low. He opened the utility box that controlled the plaza lights and the slope monitoring sensors. 30 seconds later, the cameras went dark. He didn't know my camera was pointed at the hill, not the plaza. That was the moment everything changed. This wasn't arrogance anymore. This was tampering. I wrote one more warning, big black letters in a plastic sleeve, and taped it next to their glossy celebration poster. Geological hazard. Imminent risk. Stop work now. By morning, they tore mine down and replaced it with no trespassing. I almost gave up then. Honest to God, I did. I felt like I was shouting into a storm. I poured coffee, sat on the porch, watched the rain roll off the roof like the sky itself was exhausted with me. But that night, Eileen brought me a mug of coffee and whispered, "If you stop fighting, who's left to protect us?" That dragged me back. Not out of pride, but responsibility. So Saturday morning, I went down to the plaza. The sky was low, heavy gray, the kind of gray that doesn't move. People were gathering, folding tables, balloons, kids, coffee. The whole place smelled like wet soil and bad decisions. Kennedy tapped the mic, smiled wide. "Welcome, neighbors. Today we celebrate progress." A tremor rolled under my boots. Subtle, but not subtle enough. Ranger whined, pulling toward higher ground. I yelled, "Get off the concrete now!" Everyone turned. Kennedy sighed into the microphone. "Please don't let Mr. Ward's fear-mongering ruin the—" Another tremor. Stronger. Coffee cups rattled. A kid started crying. Someone asked if it was thunder. Then came the sound that shuts down every conversation at once, a deep grinding roar, like the earth shifting in its sleep. I looked at the slope just in time to see a crack rip across it like a lightning bolt. Trees leaned, soil bulged outward, the whole hillside exhaled and then collapsed. Mud surged like a brown tidal wave, dragging logs, roots, chunks of fence. The far end of the concrete pad vanished in an instant. Benches flipped, people screamed. The banner ripped off the poles and flew across the chaos like it was trying to escape too. Kennedy and Tara were caught immediately, dragged knee-deep in mud. Cole Benson fell flat on his side and nearly disappeared until he caught a buried pipe. I jumped the guardrail and charged toward them. Mud splashed up to my thighs. Ranger barked like a siren. "Grab my hand," I shouted. I pulled Kennedy first, his hair plastered to his face, eyes wild with panic. Tara followed, sobbing, gasping. Cole slipped again and went under halfway before I grabbed the back of his collar and hauled him forward with everything I had left. By the time rescue crews arrived, the plaza was a mangled crater. The entire lower slope was gone. The concrete pad lay twisted like a broken tooth. The HOA's big dream project was now an ugly scar on the earth. Kennedy collapsed beside me, shaking. You knew," he choked. "I warned you," I said. "You just didn't listen." Investigators swarmed the scene. I gave them my footage, my charts, my logs. Reporters circled like vultures around fresh truth. And when they finally reviewed the time-lapse still of Kennedy kneeling at the utility box at 4:09 a.m., the room went silent. Negligence wasn't a question anymore. It was evidence. The hearing came fast. They showed every chart, every email I'd sent, every basement crack Eileen documented, every rainfall anomaly, and finally the footage of Kennedy disabling the sensors. His lawyer tried blaming the weather, blaming the soil, blaming anything except the man who'd shut down the only system designed to warn them. But the truth didn't need my help. It was standing on its own, loud and unavoidable, printed across a dozen screens in the courtroom. By the end of the hearing, Kennedy Morgan's entire board had stepped down. The HOA was placed under state supervision, and any future construction on that slope was permanently banned. When the verdict was read, Kennedy didn't look angry. He didn't even look sad. He just looked small, like the hill had carved straight through his ego and left nothing but the truth. As I walked out of this courthouse, reporters tried to ask me how I felt. Relieved, vindicated, triumphant. But honestly, I just felt tired, because nobody should have to scream this hard to stop something so predictable. And as I got home, set my logbook on the table and listened to the ground finally go quiet after months of tension, only one thought stayed with me. Some disasters aren't created by nature, they're created by people who refuse to listen.